Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter. Arjuna said, If, O Janardana, according to thee, knowledge is superior to action, why then, O Keshava, dost thou engage me in this terrible action? With these seemingly conflicting words, thou art, as it were, bewildering my understanding. Tell me that one thing for certain, by which I can attain to the highest. The blessed Lord said, In the beginning of creation, O sinless one, the twofold path of devotion was given by me to this world. The path of knowledge for the meditative, the path of work for the active. By non-performance of work, none reaches worklessness. By merely giving up action, no one attains to perfection. Verily, none can ever rest for even an instant without performing action. For all are made to act helplessly indeed by the gunas, born of Prakriti. He who, restraining the organs of action, sits revolving in the mind thoughts regarding objects of senses, he of deluded understanding is called a hypocrite. But who, controlling the senses by the mind, unattached, directs his organs of action to the path of work, he, O Arjuna, excels. Do thou perform obligatory action, for action is superior to inaction, and even the bare maintenance of thy body would not be possible if thou art inactive. The world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of yajna. Do thou therefore, O son of Kunti, perform action for yajna alone, devoid of attachment. The Prajapati, having in the beginning created mankind together with yajna, said, By this shall ye multiply, this shall be the milk cow of your desires. Cherish the devas with this, and may those devas cherish you. Thus, cherishing one another, ye shall gain the highest good. The devas, cherished by yajna, will give you desired for objects. Unquote. So, he who enjoys objects given by the devas without offering in return to them is verily a thief. The good, eating the remnants of yajna, are freed from all sins, but who cook food only for themselves, those sinful ones, eat sin. From food come forth beings, from rain food is produced, from yajna arises rain, and yajna is born of karma. Know karma to have risen from the Veda, and the Veda from the imperishable. Therefore the all-pervading Veda is ever centered in yajna. He who here follows not the wheel, thus set revolving, living in sin, and satisfied in the senses, O son of Pritha, he lives in vain. But the man who is devoted to the self, and is satisfied with the self, and content in the self alone, he has no obligatory duty. He has no object in this world to gain by doing an action, nor does he incur any loss by non-performance of action, nor has he need of depending on any being for any object. Therefore do thou always perform actions which are obligatory, without attachment. By performing action without attachment, one attains to the highest. Verily, by action alone, Janaka and others attained perfection. Also, simply with the view for the guidance of men, thou shouldst perform action. Whatsoever the superior person does, that is followed by others. What he demonstrates by action, that people follow. I have, O son of Pritha, no duty, nothing that I have not gained, and nothing that I have to gain in the 3 worlds. Yet I continue in action. If ever I did not continue in work, without relaxation, men, O son of Pritha, would in every way follow in my wake. If I did not do work, these worlds would perish. I should be the cause of the admixture of races, and I should ruin these beings. As do the unwise, attached to work, act, so should the wise act, O descendant of Bharata, but without attachment, desirous of the guidance of the world. One should not unsettle the understanding of the ignorant, attached to action. The wise, himself steadily acting, should engage the ignorant in all work. The gunas of Prakriti perform all action, with the understanding deluded by egoism, Man thinks, I am the doer. But one with true insight into the domains of guna and karma, knowing that gunas as senses merely rest on gunas as objects, does not become attached. Men of perfect knowledge should not unsettle the understanding of people of dull wit and imperfect knowledge, who, deluded by the gunas of prakriti, attach themselves to the functions of the gunas. Renouncing all actions to me, with mind centered on the self, getting rid of hope and selfishness, fight, free from mental fever. Those men who constantly practice this teaching of mine, full of shraddha, and without cavilling, they too are freed from work. But those who, decrying this teaching of mine, do not practice it, deluded in all knowledge and devoid of discrimination, know them to be ruined. Even a wise man acts in accordance with his own nature. Beings follow nature. What can restraint do? Attachment and aversion of the senses for their respective objects are natural. Let none come under their sway. They are his foes. Better is one's own dharma, though imperfect, than the dharma of another well performed. Better is death in one's own dharma. The dharma of another is fraught with fear. Arjuna said, But by what impelled does man commit sin, though against his wishes, O Varshneya, constrained as it were by force? The blessed Lord said, It is desire, it is anger, born of the Rajogunya, of great craving and of great sin. Know this as the foe here in this world. As fire is enveloped by smoke, as a mirror by dust, as an embryo by the secundine, so is it covered by that. Knowledge is covered by this, the constant foe of the wise. O son of Kunti, the unappeasable fire of desire. The senses, the mind, and the intellect are said to be its abode. Through these it deludes the embodied by veiling his wisdom. Therefore, O bull of the Bharata race, controlling the senses at the outset, kill it, the sinful, the destroyer of knowledge and realization. The senses are said to be superior to the body. The mind is superior to the senses, the intellect is superior to the mind, and that which is superior to the intellect is he, the Atman. Thus, knowing him who is superior to the intellect, and restraining the self by the self, destroy, O mighty armed, that enemy, the unseizable foe, desire. The end of the 3rd chapter designated the way of action. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter. The blessed Lord said, I told this imperishable yoga to Vivashvat. Vivashvat told it to Manu, and Manu told it to Ishvaku. Thus handed down in regular succession, the royal sages knew it. This yoga, by long lapse of time, declined in this world, O burner of foes. I have this day told thee that same ancient yoga, for thou art my devotee and my friend, and this secret is profound indeed. Arjuna said, Later was thy birth, and that of Vivashvat prior. How then should I understand that thou toldest this in the beginning? The blessed Lord said, Many are the births that have been passed by me and thee. O Arjuna, I know them all, whilst thou knowest not, O scorcher of foes. Though I am unborn, of changeless nature and lord of beings, yet subjugating my prakriti, I come into being by my own maya. Whenever, O descendant of Bharata, there is decline of Jama and rise of Ajama, then I body myself forth. For the protection of the good, for the destruction of the wicked, and for the establishment of Dharma, I come into being in every age. He who thus knows, in true light, my divine birth and action, leaving the body, is not born again. He attains to me, O Arjuna. Freed from attachment, fear, and anger, absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, Purified by the fire of knowledge, many have attained my being. In whatever way men worship me, in the same way do I fulfill their desires. It is my path, O son of Pritha, that men tread in all ways. Longing for success in action in this world, men worship the gods, because success resulting from action is quickly attained in the human world. The fourfold caste was created by me, by the differentiation of guna and karma. Though I am the author thereof, know me to be the non-doer and changeless. Actions do not taint me, nor have I any thirst for the result of action. He who knows me thus is not fettered by action. Knowing thus, the ancient seekers after freedom also performed action. Do thou therefore perform action, as did the ancients in olden times. Even sages are bewildered as to what is action and what is inaction. I shall therefore tell you what action is, by knowing which you will be freed from evil. For verily the true nature even of action, enjoined by the Shastras, should be known, as also that of forbidden action and of inaction. The nature of karma is impenetrable. He who sees inaction in action and action in inaction, he is intelligent among men. He is a yogi and a doer of all action, whose undertakings are all devoid of plan and desire for results, and whose actions are burnt by the fire of knowledge. Him the sages call wise. Forsaking the clinging to fruits of action, ever satisfied, depending on nothing, though engaged in action, he does not do anything. Without hope, the body and mind controlled and all possessions relinquished, he does not suffer any evil consequences by doing mere bodily action. Content with what comes to him without effort, unaffected by the pairs of opposites, free from envy, even-minded in success and failure, though acting, he is not bound. Devoid of attachment, liberated with mind centered in knowledge, performing work for yajna alone, his whole karma dissolves away. The process is Brahman, the clarified butter is Brahman, offered by Brahman in the fire of Brahman. By seeing Brahman in action, he reaches Brahman alone. Some yogis perform sacrifices to devas alone, while others offer the self as sacrifice by the self in the fire of Brahman alone. Some again offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice in the fire of control, while others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice in the fire of the senses. Some again offer all the actions of the senses and the functions of the vital energy as sacrifice in the fire of control in self, kindled by knowledge. Others again offer wealth, austerity, and yoga as sacrifice, while still others of self-restraint and rigid vows offer study of the scriptures and knowledge as sacrifice. Yet some offer as sacrifice the outgoing into the incoming breath, and the incoming into the outgoing, stopping the courses of the incoming and outgoing breaths, constantly practicing the regulation of the vital energy, while others yet of regulated food offer in the pranas the function thereof. All of these are knowers of yajna, having their sins consumed by yajna, and eating of the nectar, the remnant of yajna, they go to the eternal Brahman. Even this world is not for the non-performer of yajna. How then another, O best of the Kurus? Various yajnas, like the above, are strewn in the storehouse of the Veda. Know them all to be born of action, and thus knowing thou shalt be free. Knowledge sacrifice, O scorcher of foes, is superior to sacrifice performed with material objects. All action in its entirety, O Partha, attains its consummation in knowledge. Know that by prostrating thyself, by questions and by service, the wise, those who have realized the truth, will instruct thee in that knowledge. knowing which thou shalt not, O Pandava, again get deluded like this, and by which thou shalt see the whole of creation in thyself and in me. Even if thou be the most sinful among all the sinful, yet by the raft of knowledge alone thou shalt go across all sin. As blazing fire reduces wood into ashes, so, O Arjuna, does the fire of knowledge reduce all karma to ashes. Verily, there exists nothing in this world purifying like knowledge. In good time, having reached perfection in yoga, one realizes that oneself in one's own heart. The man with Shraddha, the devoted, the master of one's senses, attains this knowledge. Having attained knowledge, one goes at once to the supreme peace. The ignorant, the man without Shraddha, the doubting self, goes to destruction. The doubting self has neither this world, nor the next, nor happiness. With work renounced by yoga and doubts rent asunder by knowledge, O Dhananjaya, actions do not bind him who is poised in the self. Therefore, cutting with the sword of knowledge this doubt about the self, born of ignorance, residing in thy heart, take refuge in yoga. Arise, O Bharata. The end of chapter 4 designated the way of renunciation of action in knowledge. 5th chapter. Arjuna said, Renunciation of action, O Krishna, thou commendest. And again its performance. Which is the better one of these? Do thou tell me decisively. The blessed Lord said, Both renunciation and performance of action lead to freedom. Of these, performance of action is superior to the renunciation of action. He should be known a constant sannyasi who neither likes nor dislikes, for free from the pairs of opposites, mighty armed, he is easily set free from bondage. Children, not the wise, speak of knowledge and performance of action as distinct. He who truly lives in one gains the fruits of both. The plane which is reached by the Janins is also reached by the Karma Yogans. Who sees knowledge and performance of action as one, he sees. Renunciation of action, O mighty armed, is hard to attain to without performance of action. The man of meditation, purified by devotion to action, quickly goes to Brahman. With the mind purified by devotion to performance of action, and the body conquered and senses subdued, one who realizes one's self as the self in all beings, though acting, is not tainted. The knower of truth, being centered in the self, should think, quote, I do nothing at all, unquote. Though seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, going, sleeping, breathing, speaking, letting go, holding, opening, and closing the eyes, convinced that it is the senses that move among sense objects. He who does actions forsaking attachment, resigning them to Brahman, is not soiled by evil, like unto a lotus leaf by water. Devotees in the path of work perform action only with body, mind, senses, and intellect forsaking attachment, for the purification of the heart. The well-poised, forsaking the fruit of action, attains peace, born of steadfastness. The unbalanced one, led by desire, is bound by being attached to the fruit of action. The subduer of the senses, having renounced all actions by discrimination, rests happily in the city of the 9 gates, neither acting nor causing others to act. Neither agency nor actions does the Lord create for the world, nor does he bring about the union with the fruit of action. It is universal ignorance that does it all. The omnipresent takes note of the merit or demerit of none. Knowledge is enveloped in ignorance, hence do beings get deluded. But whose ignorance is destroyed by the knowledge of self, that knowledge of theirs, like the sun, reveals the supreme Brahman. Those who have their intellect absorbed in that, whose self is that, whose steadfastness is in that, whose consummation is that, their impurities cleansed by knowledge, they attain to non-return moksha. The knowers of the self look with an equal eye on a Brahmana, endowed with learning and humility, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a pariah. Relative existence has been conquered by them, even in this world, whose mind rests in evenness, since Brahman is even and without imperfection. Therefore they indeed rest in Brahman. Resting in Brahman, with intellect steady and without delusion, the knower of Brahman neither rejoiceth on receiving what is pleasant, nor grieveth on receiving what is unpleasant. With the heart unattached to external objects, he realizes the joy that is in the self. With a heart devoted to the meditation of Brahman, he attains undecaying happiness. Since enjoyments that are contact-born are parents of misery alone, and with beginning and end, O son of Kunti, a wise man does not seek pleasure in them. He who can withstand in this world before the liberation from the body the impulse arising from lust and anger, he is steadfast in yoga, he is a happy man. Whose happiness is within, whose relaxation is within, whose light is within, that yogi alone, becoming Brahman, gains absolute freedom. With imperfections exhausted, doubts dispelled, senses controlled, engage in the good of all beings, the rishis obtain absolute freedom. Engaged in the good of all beings, the rishis obtain absolute freedom. Released from lust and anger, the heart controlled, the self-realized, absolute freedom is for such sannyasis both here and hereafter. Shutting out external objects, steadying the eyes between the eyebrows, restricting the even currents of prana and apana inside the nostrils, the senses, mind and intellect controlled with moksha as the supreme goal, freed from desire, fear and anger, such a man of meditation is verily free forever. Knowing me as the dispenser of yajnas and asceticisms, as the great Lord of all worlds, as the friend of all beings, he attains peace. The end of the 5th chapter, designated The Way of Renunciation.